Whispers from the Invisible Realms. Introduction. There are moments in life that feel out of place, not in the sense of wrongness, but in the sense of mystery. A dream that feels more real than waking life. A sudden thought that proves prophetic. A stranger's words echo something you've been silently asking for. A coincidence so precise, so impossible, that it shakes your certainty in randomness. You pause, heart slowed, breath held, not because you're afraid, but because you know something just happened. You can't explain it, but you can't ignore it either. Something whispered. We've been taught to filter out the subtle, silence intuition in favor of information, to trust what can be measured, photographed and repeated in a lab. And yet even those who swear allegiance to logic feel it. There's more to this life than what's visible. Something is moving beneath the surface of events, something that doesn't shout but whispers. And those whispers, they don't come from your imagination. They come from the invisible architecture that underlies all things. The ancients knew it. They didn't build temples for beauty alone. They aligned them to stars, designed to amplify silence, carved them with symbols not meant to be seen but felt. They believed the cosmos was alive, and that between worlds, between waking and dreaming, between breath and thought, there were voices. Not human voices, but voices of memory, of presence, of intelligence beyond the veil. Modern science is beginning to remember what the mystics never forgot. That consciousness is non-local. That intention affects matter. That space is not empty. That reality responds to awareness. As Lynn McTaggart notes in The Field, we are living in a vast sea of interconnected energy, a field of intelligence that binds and informs everything. So what if the strange nudges you feel aren't illusions? What if your recurring dreams, sudden knowings, or moments of deep déjà vu are not glitches in your mind, but signals from a deeper pattern? This book is for those who have felt something stir behind the curtain of reality. Who has heard the subtle hum beneath the noise? Who have sensed the design hiding inside the chaos? Because the whispers are real, and they're everywhere. They live in your intuition. In the split-second decision that saved you, it is the quiet urge to turn down a street you've never walked, only to find exactly what you need. They live in ancient texts, in symbols older than language, in songs that make you cry for no reason. They speak through synchronicities, through dreams, through nature, through silence. But they don't scream. They wait. They wait for stillness, for receptivity, for attunement. And once you begin to listen, truly listen, you'll find that these whispers form a language. One you already know, not with your brain, but with your being. It is a language older than words, spoken not in sound, but in resonance, in vibration, in inner recognition. What we call the invisible is not empty. It is simply subtle. The realms beyond sight are not far away. They are right here, only slightly out of focus, just beyond the reach of expectation. And the more you soften your attention, the more you become aware of the patterns weaving through your life. The guidance is hiding in your own questions. The design is hidden in your delays. This book is not a map. It is an invitation to attune your inner ear, to become fluent in the frequencies that shape reality behind the scenes, to engage with your own life as a conversation between worlds. Because you were never just living in one realm. You were always part of many. So now take a breath, a slow, sacred breath. Let it clear the noise. There is something that's been trying to reach you. It has no name, no form, but it has waited a long time, not to be understood, but to be remembered. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Thin Veil. There is something about silence that unnerves the modern mind. We fill it with music, with screens, with conversation, anything to escape the stillness. But the ancients revered silence not as absence, but as presence. They knew that between sound and thought, between heartbeat and breath, there is a threshold, a veil so thin, so delicate, that to cross it requires no force, only attention. And once crossed, everything begins to shimmer with meaning. The world you know is not the only world. You feel this intuitively. You've seen it in the way a room changes when someone walks in. You've sensed it in moments of synchronicity, where events align with such precision that they defy logic. You've felt it in the electric weight of déjà vu, or in the whisper of a dream that continues to haunt you, not with fear, but with truth. Reality is layered. What we see is only the outer crust, the tip of an iceberg extending deep into mystery. Behind the surface of the scene lies the invisible scaffolding of all things. It is not an empty void, but a realm of pure intelligence, vibrating with potential, humming with symbols, shaped by intention. It is the realm that gives rise to form, and while it cannot be touched by hand or measured with machines, it can be felt. It can be known. Call it the astral, the etheric, the noosphere, the field. It has many names, but its presence is always the same, subtle, intelligent, and alive. This is what the Hermeticists spoke of when they taught that as above, so below, as within, so without. It is what quantum physicists now hint at when they describe entangled particles communicating across impossible distances, or when they admit that the observer does not simply perceive reality, but shapes it. You are not separate from this field. You are immersed in it. You are made of it. Your thoughts ripple into it. Your emotions color it. Your dreams extend into it. And this is not a poetic metaphor. It is the architecture of consciousness. Every spiritual tradition, at its core, has taught that life is multidimensional, that the physical body is just one expression of the self, and that beyond it lies a network of energy, memory, archetype, and soul. Theosophy describes these layers with precision, the etheric, the astral, the mental, the causal, all moving toward the divine blueprint of your being. In these layers reside your intuitive knowings. Your soul contracts, the echoes of past lives, and the whispers of guides whose presence you may have felt without ever seeing. In dreams, in near-death experiences, in deep meditation, the veil thins. The curtain lifts, and for a brief, shimmering moment, you remember. You remember that there is more to you than your name, your story, and your face. You remember that consciousness is not trapped inside the brain, but expands far beyond it, stretching through time, folding through space, reaching into dimensions that exist, not somewhere else but right here, overlapping this one unseen by default but not unreachable. The moment you acknowledge this possibility, not as belief but as exploration, you step into initiation. You begin to perceive the world differently. The bird song at sunrise feels like a message. The numbers on the clock seem to wink with timing. The chance encounter becomes charged with meaning. What was once dismissed as coincidence is now seen as communication. The invisible begins to whisper more clearly, not louder, but more often. Because truth doesn't demand, it invites. The invisible realms don't knock down your door, they wait for your stillness, your sincerity, your willingness to listen beyond noise. They whisper, not because they are weak, but because they are sacred, and sacred things are always soft at first. Some have called this sixth sense intuition, others call it resonance, but beneath all terms is the same experience, a knowing that doesn't originate in thought, yet feels undeniably true. You have had these moments, everyone has. The sudden clarity, the unexplainable pull, the voice that wasn't a voice but moved through you like breath. These are not hallucinations. They are echoes. They are openings. The field responds to your awareness. The more you attune, the more it speaks. The more you trust it, the more it reveals. Eventually, what once felt like a subtle suggestion begins to feel like a clear conversation, a guidance system not based on prediction, but on participation, not on control, but on coherence. To live in this place is to walk between worlds, to keep one foot in the visible and one in the unseen, to become a vessel that translates whispers into form, action into alignment. This is the path of the mystic, the artist, the seer, but it is also the path of the mother, the teacher, the healer, the creator. It is the path of anyone who chooses to live awake, to listen as much as they speak, to sense as much as they see. You are not imagining things. You are perceiving what lies beneath the surface of things, and this is just the beginning. Chapter 2. The language of symbols, the voice of dreams. The invisible rarely speaks in sentences, it speaks in symbols. It doesn't lecture, it gestures. It doesn't explain, it shows. And those who have learned to listen know that the soul's native language is not built of words but of images. It speaks in metaphor, in archetype, in dreams that slip between memory and myth. Every night, while your conscious mind rests, another self rises, one less bound by logic, one that walks without time, hears without sound, sees without eyes. This self journeys into the imaginal, into the layers beneath waking thought, where the psyche dances with the cosmos and meaning becomes shape. This is the realm of dreams, not the mere residue of the day but the echo chamber of spirit. Carl Jung called dreams the royal road to the unconscious, but he also knew they were more than just reflections of personal experience. In dreams, we enter the archetypal field, the deeper strata of the human soul where personal meets universal and symbols carry the weight of timeless truth. A staircase becomes the path of evolution. A snake becomes transformation. A house with many rooms becomes the map of the inner world. We do not invent these symbols, they arise, and they arise because they carry power. In his Red Book, Jung describes encountering inner figures that were not aspects of his personality, but presences, independent intelligences speaking from beyond the boundaries of the ego. He did not label them as fantasy. He entered into dialogue with them. He recorded their messages. He understood that the psyche is not a closed system, but a portal, a meeting place between human consciousness and invisible realms. This is not confined to psychologists or mystics. You too have heard these voices, perhaps in a dream so vivid it followed you for weeks, or in a childhood vision you've never been able to explain, or in a sudden symbolic image that entered your mind unbidden and left you with a sense of awe or warning. These are not delusions. They are communications from the inner plane speaking through the only language the soul truly understands: imagery, pattern, vibration. Ancient cultures knew this. Long before psychology, they treated dreams as sacred. In Egypt, temples of dreaming were constructed where seekers could sleep and receive guidance from the divine. In the Vedic tradition, dreams were seen as glimpses into other lifetimes or dimensions. Indigenous shamans still walk between these worlds, listening to the voices that rise in trance and ceremony. The dream was never just a dream. It was a bridge, a message, a whisper from the invisible. And if dreams are the night's messengers, symbols are the day's reminders. They appear around us constantly, in numbers that repeat, in animals that cross your path in uncanny ways, in songs that play at exactly the right moment, in art that moves something in you can't name. These are not coincidences, they are synchronicities, meaningful alignments between the inner and outer world, and they are the signature of a living field of intelligence responding to you in real time. Jung believed that synchronicity was the psyche's way of expressing the deep connection between mind and matter, a kind of cosmic wink, a reminder that your inner life and outer reality are not separate, they are in dialogue. And when you learn to interpret this dialogue, your life becomes less about control and more about relationship. So how do we begin to listen? Not with analysis, but with openness, not by decoding every detail, but by feeling into the resonance. Symbols are alive. They are not puzzles to be solved, but presences to be encountered. When a dream image stirs something in you, sit with it, sketch it, write about it, ask it what it wants. When a symbol repeats in your life, take note, not with superstition, but with curiosity. What is it mirroring back to you? What aspect of your inner world is asking for attention? You don't need to be an expert in mythology or a scholar of symbology. Your soul already understands the language. You only need to remember how to read it. This is how the invisible realms speak. Through dreams, through images, through quiet patterns dancing just beyond the reach of logic. When you stop dismissing them as random or irrelevant, you begin to enter into the rhythm of deeper guidance. And the more you listen, the more it speaks. Because the language of spirit is not imposed, it's invited. The symbols have always been there. The whispers have always been reaching you. You just needed to turn your head slightly and begin to see. Chapter 3. The World Behind the Mirror. There is a world just behind this one. It is not light years away, nor does it require death to reach it. It exists in the spaces we overlook, in the stillness behind sound, in the space between thoughts, in the soft veil that falls over your mind just before sleep. This world is not metaphorical. It is real, though it refuses to be measured by material instruments. You may have brushed against it in dreams that felt more vivid than waking life, in meditations where your body dissolved, in moments of déjà vu that left you haunted. This is the astral realm, the world behind the mirror. The ancients described it in many ways. The Egyptians called it the Duat. The Tibetans mapped it in the Bardo Thodol, the Book of the Dead. The mystics of India explored it through yogic sleep, while theosophists described it as a distinct layer of experience, a frequency just beyond the physical, filled with fluid forms, thought-created landscapes and emotional echoes. It is the realm of dream, of vision, of subtle influence. It is the canvas where the psyche plays out its unspoken stories. In the astral, your thoughts are not private. They are things. Imagination is not confined to the mind. It becomes environment, and intention acts as gravity. This is why the astral has been both feared and revered. It reflects not just your conscious desires, but your unconscious residue. It is a hall of mirrors, capable of showing beauty, but also distortion. In this space, if you carry anger, it may become a storm. If you carry fear, it may become a shadowed figure. And if you carry love, deep, radiant, unconditional love, it illuminates everything. But make no mistake, the astral realm is not a dream. It is a domain, a layer of reality that overlaps this one like light through water. Your soul travels there every night while the body sleeps. Most forget. But sometimes, just sometimes, you remember. A flying dream. A conversation with a departed loved one. A symbolic place you've never seen, but which feels familiar. These are not illusions. They are visits. The Monroe Institute, founded by Robert Monroe, dedicated decades of research to astral projection and out-of-body states. Through sound frequencies and deep trance, thousands have described the same phenomena, lifting out of the body, feeling more alive than ever, exploring dimensions that are as structured and intelligent as our own, but infinitely more fluid. Monroe called them focus levels. Others have called them planes, but all point to the same reality. Consciousness is not confined to the body. It is mobile, it is multidimensional, and it remembers the way home. Your astral body is the subtle twin of your physical form. It feels light, lucid, capable of movement not bound by gravity or time. It responds instantly to thought. It can stretch, shrink, fly, and walk through walls. But more importantly, it feels deeply. Emotions in the astral are amplified. They become colors, currents, and even landscapes. The astral is not less real. In many ways, it is more alive than the world of matter. It is the prototype space, the realm of creation before manifestation. And yet it is not the final destination. It is a school, a mirror, a passage, and how you engage with it determines what you bring back. The astral is filled with memory, not just your own, but collective memory. Echoes of other lives, other timelines, archetypal forces. Sometimes what you see there belongs to you. Sometimes it belongs to the collective field. This is why discernment is so essential. Not everything encountered in the astral is truth, but everything carries teaching. The more emotionally balanced you are in waking life, the clearer your perception in the astral world will be. This is why yogis purify. Why do mystics fast? Why do shamans prepare? Clarity invites clarity. Intention shapes destination. If you approach the astral world with curiosity, openness, and self-awareness, it becomes a field of insight. If you approach it with confusion or greed, it becomes a maze. But it is always honest. The astral realm is not some fantastical escape. It is a reflection of inner structure. And to become aware of it is to realize that your inner world isn't confined to you. It's part of a much larger tapestry, a shared field where souls meet, memories surface, and the architecture of spirit is revealed. So when you dream tonight, remember, you may be traveling, you may be receiving, you may be walking the echo of something your waking self has not yet understood. And when you wake, resist the urge to call it just a dream. It may have been more real than anything you'll see with your eyes, because the world behind the mirror is always there, and it is watching, reflecting, whispering, waiting for you to look back. Chapter 4. Synchronicity, when the universe speaks in code. At first glance, life appears to be a stream of disconnected events, meetings and partings, routines and interruptions, moments that seem random, chaotic, without deeper order. But if you look closely, if you slow down enough to notice, you begin to catch glimpses of something behind the curtain, an intelligence arranging the stage, a whisper embedded in timing, a nudge hidden in repetition, a hidden thread weaving the visible into meaning. This is synchronicity. The philosopher and psychologist Carl Jung coined the term to describe those uncanny coincidences that feel too precise to be random, like thinking of someone you haven't spoken to in years, only to receive their message moments later, or seeing the same number over and over until it no longer feels like a coincidence. It feels like a signature, or meeting the right person at the exact moment you need them, with no logical explanation as to how or why. Jung called it meaningful coincidence. He believed that synchronicity reveals the bridge between the inner and the outer worlds, a kind of cosmic mirror showing us that consciousness and reality are not separate. They are in dialogue. They reflect one another with a precision that defies logic. And yet, the more you awaken to this, the more natural it becomes. You stop brushing these moments off as chance. You begin to trust the timing. You learn to listen. Because synchronicity is not random, it is resonance. It happens when your inner state aligns with an outer opportunity, when your energy matches a message that's been waiting for you, when your attention becomes a tuning fork for the deeper harmony of things. The universe is always humming, always broadcasting, but only when you are still enough to hear, when your frequency is clear enough to receive, do the whispers become obvious. And the moment they do, the game changes. Life is no longer something that happens to you. It becomes a dance, a rhythm, a sacred code unfolding one step at a time. But here's the key. Synchronicity is not a reward. It is not proof of being spiritually advanced. It is simply the natural result of alignment, like two radio signals coming into harmony, like a lock clicking into place. It's the outer world saying, yes, keep going. Sometimes synchronicity comes to confirm a decision. Other times, it comes to reroute you. It can warn, it can affirm, but it never imposes. It speaks in symbols, not commands, and it leaves room for interpretation. Part of the sacred dance is your participation in the meaning. The universe will present the pattern, but it is up to you to decode it. Ancient traditions knew this well. In indigenous cultures, animals that appeared unexpectedly were often seen as messengers. A hawk is circling overhead, a fox crossing your path, a snake in a dream. These were not superstitions. They were acknowledgements of the dialogue between spirit and matter. The Egyptians too read omens in nature. The Greeks had oracles, the I Ching, the tarot, the runes, all are languages of symbolic correspondence, tools to help the conscious mind speak to the invisible, to remind us that life is not mute, it is constantly in conversation. Modern science, too, is beginning to recognize what mystics have long understood. Quantum entanglement shows that particles can communicate instantly across vast distances. Experiments in intention and probability show that consciousness can influence matter. What if synchronicity is simply the subjective experience of these laws in motion? What if the outer world is your subconscious made visible? What if the things that keep showing up, the names, the symbols, the numbers, the colors, are not meaningless patterns but messages, not to be obsessed over, but to be honored, not to predict the future, but to draw you into the present, more awake, more receptive, more alive. When you begin to track your synchronicities, you begin to see the design. You notice that when you're aligned, clear in your intention, centered in your energy, these moments multiply. Doors open, connections spark, life responds. And when you're off course, the synchronicities dim, not as punishment, but as an invitation. The code is still speaking. You've simply gone out of range. So, keep a journal. Note the symbols. Trust the nudges. Don't demand meaning. Invite it. Let it reveal itself in its own time. The invisible realms are not distant. They are here now, writing messages in the geometry of your life. Every person you meet, every delay, every song stirs something in you. Every street you're drawn to walk. These are lines in the poem, notes in the music. You don't have to understand it all. You only have to pay attention. Because when you do, life begins to whisper back. And suddenly the world is no longer silent. It's singing. Chapter 5. The presence behind the thought. Sometimes it's a quiet pull, sometimes a sudden knowing, sometimes it feels like a voice, though no words were spoken, just an impression, a direction, a gentle redirection. We often say, "I don't know why, but I just felt I had to," and then later realize how perfectly things aligned. That whisper wasn't random. It wasn't just instinct or chance. It was presence. There is something, or someone, behind the curtain of thought, a deeper intelligence that watches quietly, speaks softly, and never forces its way forward. You may call it your higher self, or perhaps a guide. Some speak of angels, others speak of inner beings, ancestral spirits, or the oversoul. The names change. The presence does not. This presence does not live in the clouds. It is not separate from you. It is you, on a higher octave, the version of you that remembers who you are when you forget, the one who sees across timelines, who holds your blueprint, who knows your soul's rhythm when your mind gets lost in noise. It has always been there, not as fantasy, but as foundation. Mystics and sages have spoken of this for centuries. Plato wrote of the daimon, a spiritual companion assigned at birth, whispering the soul's purpose across lifetimes. The Vedic texts speak of the Atman, the unchanging higher essence that remains untouched by fear or karma. The Sufis describe it as the beloved within. The Theosophists, like Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, describe an entire hierarchy of consciousness that includes the soul, the higher self, and the monadic essence beyond even that. Each step more subtle, more luminous. In the Law of One, channeled teachings from a consciousness known as Ra, the higher self is described as your future self, existing outside of linear time, offering guidance back through the illusion of separation. In this model, your higher self is not just an observer. It is actively feeding you intuition, synchronicity, and impulse, guiding you through free will, not force. You are never being pushed. You are always invited. And then there are the guides, not figments of imagination but subtle intelligences that walk beside you, not to live your life for you, but to hold space, to offer nudges, to plant seeds. Sometimes they come in dreams, sometimes in meditation, sometimes they feel like the presence in a room just before you make a major decision. They don't interrupt. They are waiting for your invitation. You may never see them with your eyes, but you felt them. In the moment you avoided danger without knowing why. In the sudden comfort that arrived in the middle of despair. In the wordless clarity that dropped into your heart when you needed it most. These moments aren't hallucinations, they are collaborations. They are. The reason this guidance often feels so quiet is that it doesn't compete with the ego. It doesn't shout over fear. It waits until the field is clear enough to land. And the field clears when we become still, when we soften, when we trust. To access this deeper layer of guidance, you don't need rituals or ceremonies, though they can help. What you need is space, stillness, a break in the broadcast of your conditioned mind. The voice of the higher self comes not in language, but in resonance. It arrives in imagery, in symbolism, in patterns that only your soul could recognize. You've likely dismissed it many times. We all have. We get an intuitive message and then override it with logic. We feel the pull to change direction, and we rationalize it away. And yet what we call regret is often just the recognition that our soul spoke and we didn't listen. But the guidance never stops. It doesn't punish. It patiently circles back, waiting for readiness. The same message may return 100 times in different forms. A quote, a dream, a stranger's story, a feeling in your gut that says, turn here instead. It never demands. It suggests. It never blames. It waits. The more you trust that presence, the louder it becomes, not in volume, but in clarity. The static begins to dissolve. The signal sharpens. Your body begins to feel the difference between fear and truth, between impulse and alignment. You learn to tell the voice of old wounds from the voice of inner wisdom. One contracts, the other expands. And when you truly begin to follow that inner guidance, you become a different kind of human. Not above the world, but within it, anchored in it, yet not limited by it. You walk the same streets and live among the same people, but you move differently. You listen more, you rush less. You act not out of reaction, but resonance. This is the way of the soul-led life. Not a life of perfection, but of participation. A life guided by something deeper than logic, something ancient, luminous, and endlessly loving. So the next time you feel that subtle whisper, that intuitive nudge, that presence standing silently behind the moment, pause. Don't explain it away. That's you, the real you, calling yourself back into alignment. Listen. Chapter 6. The Geometry of Vibration. If you listen closely, not with ears but with presence, you will notice that everything hums, not metaphorically, but literally. The atoms that make up your skin are vibrating, so are the trees, the stones, the thoughts that flicker through your mind. The emotions rise and fall like tides. Every single thing you see, touch, or feel is vibrating. And this vibration is not just motion, it is information. It is intelligence in motion. In the beginning, it is said, there was the word, not a word like we know it, but a vibration, a frequency, a sound so pure and fundamental that it gave birth to form. Every mystical tradition speaks of this. The Hindus call it Om, the sound of creation. The Kabbalists speak of the breath that animates the sacred letters. The Hermetics teach that everything is vibration and that reality is nothing but frequency shaped into form. Modern science agrees. Quantum physics has shown that beneath the illusion of solid matter is a sea of vibrating energy. Particles flicker in and out of existence, influenced by intention, expectation, and observation. What you call reality is more like a hologram. Stable, yes, but subtly shifting according to resonance. So what does this mean for you? It means that your inner state is not invisible. It is radiating, constantly. Like a tuning fork, you emit a frequency that informs your experience of the world. Your beliefs, your emotions, your memories, they're not just passive contents of your mind. They're vibrations, and these vibrations either harmonize or clash with the field around you. This is why some rooms feel heavy the moment you walk in, why certain people drain you without saying a word, why some conversations energize you and others leave you feeling off for hours. The invisible realm is not neutral. It is charged, and your body knows it before your mind does. The same is true in reverse. The frequency you carry shapes your reality. When you're anxious, life becomes more chaotic. When you're centered, life begins to flow. This is not magic, it is resonance. Energy seeks coherence. What you are on the inside begins to align the world around you. This is why spiritual masters focus so much on vibration. Why do yogis chant? Why do shamans drum? Why do mystics fast and meditate and align with breath? These aren't just rituals, they are technologies of frequency. They're ways of purifying, attuning, and elevating your energetic state so that the signal you emit matches the truth you desire to live. You don't need a singing bowl to do this. You are the instrument. Your voice, your breath, your awareness, they are the tools. When you speak with intention, your voice becomes medicine. When you breathe with awareness, your field becomes calm. When you hold a thought long enough with feeling, you begin to entrain your reality to that thought. But vibration isn't only about being high vibe. It's not about chasing happiness or pretending everything is light. True alignment means becoming aware of what you're actually resonating with, even if it's grief, confusion, or fear. Not to judge it, but to feel it fully, to bring coherence to it, to integrate it into the larger harmony of your being, because every emotion has a frequency, and none is wrong. Sadness is slower than joy, yes, but it has its own beauty, its own intelligence. Anger can burn, but it can also liberate. The goal is not to bypass, but to bring presence to your vibration so that it becomes clear, true, and fully yours. The more you tune in, the more precise your awareness becomes. You begin to feel when you're in alignment, not as a concept, but as a felt reality. You begin to make decisions not from fear or habit, but from resonance. This feels right. That doesn't. No need to explain. The field doesn't need words. It responds to frequency. And as your vibration refines, something miraculous begins to happen. You attract what matches your clarity. People appear who feel familiar, like echoes of your own soul. Opportunities open without force. You walk into a space and feel the universe whisper back, "Yes, you're in the right place." But you also begin to recognize what no longer fits. The job that dulls your light. The relationship lives in an older version of you. The patterns that lower your resonance. And you begin to let go, not from fear, but from frequency. Not because something is bad, but because it no longer harmonizes with who you are becoming. This is the quiet power of vibration. It doesn't push, it doesn't chase, it attracts, it aligns. It organizes life around your signal. So ask yourself, often, gently, what am I vibrating right now? Not what you're saying, not what you're pretending, but what you're truly emanating. The invisible realm is always listening, always responding, not to your words, but to your frequency. When you tune yourself like an instrument, the universe plays in harmony with you. And when you vibrate in truth, life becomes a symphony. Chapter 7. Portals and Thresholds. There are places in the world where time doesn't flow the same, where the air carries a weight, a charge, a silence too full to be empty. You step into them and feel it immediately, not with your thoughts, but with your skin, your breath, your bones. Something opens. Something listens. These are the thresholds. They exist in the outer world and in the inner. Sometimes they take the form of sacred sites, temples carved into mountains, ancient groves of trees, circles of stone. Other times they arrive in ordinary places made extraordinary by presence, the ocean at dawn, a forest at dusk, the space between two heartbeats when you are suspended in stillness. Thresholds are not bound by geography. They are bound by attention. A place becomes sacred when you meet it with sacredness. When you slow down enough to listen, to notice the shimmer beneath form, the hush beneath noise. The veil between the visible and invisible is not evenly woven. There are thinner spots, moments, places, and states of being where the fabric grows transparent and you can glimpse the other side. These are not hallucinations. They are openings. And they have been honored across every culture. In the Andes, shamans speak of huacas, power places where the spirits of the land are said to dwell. In Celtic lore, there are thin places where the boundary between this world and the other world dissolves. In Tibetan Buddhism, the bardo is a liminal state between death and rebirth, but also between any major transition. In these spaces, time stretches, symbols speak louder, and the soul becomes more receptive. You've felt this before, perhaps at a funeral, when the weight of departure cracked something open in you, perhaps during birth, when a new life entered the world and silence held its breath, perhaps during heartbreak or illness or awe. Thresholds are not always comfortable, but they are always powerful. They are also available not only in dramatic life moments, but in the subtle architecture of every day. Twilight, the brief moment between light and dark. Dreaming is the space between waking and sleep. Meditation is the pause between inhale and exhale. Ritual is the container between intention and manifestation. These are not just poetic metaphors, they are functional portals, because the threshold is not a destination, it is a frequency, a resonance you step into when the mind softens and awareness expands. One of the most powerful portals, though rarely recognized as such, is your own body. The human form, when inhabited with awareness, becomes a doorway. The spine becomes the axis. The breath becomes the bridge. The heart becomes the opening. You do not have to climb mountains to find sacred space. You carry it. You are it. But the body must be listened to, honored. Stillness must be allowed. The nervous system must be softened, because guidance, vision, presence, they do not shout. They whisper, and you cannot hear them when you're racing through life at the speed of thought. Portals appear when we slow down. Sometimes the veil thins unexpectedly. A scent, a song, a flash of light in the corner of your eye, a dream that lingers, a memory that returns for no reason. These are not accidents. They are invitations, the invisible brushing against your awareness. A moment of alignment when you become temporarily lucid inside the great dream of matter. Then, there are the times when you create the portal yourself, through intention, through ritual, through stillness, lighting a candle with reverence, speaking to the air as if something hears you, because something does. Creating a circle of space, not for performance but for presence. These acts open doors. You don't need to be an expert in mysticism to walk through. You only need sincerity, attention, trust, and when you step through, when the veil grows thin and the presence of something greater touches you, you realize you are not here to escape this world, but to bridge it, to become the meeting point between spirit and form, to walk as threshold, to live as a portal. This is what it means to be awake in a sleeping world, not to float above life, but to move through it with the awareness that it is all sacred, that every place, every moment, every person carries depth beyond appearance. And when you begin to see the world this way, the veil doesn't just thin occasionally, it begins to dissolve. Chapter 8. Shadows in the Silence. The deeper you move into subtle realms, the more important it becomes to stay anchored. The brighter the light, the sharper the shadow. And the more you attune to the whispers of the invisible, the more you must learn to discern. What is real? What is resonance? And what is simply projection, fantasy, or noise? Not every whisper comes from wisdom. This truth is ancient, but often forgotten in the age of instant spirituality. Today, it is easy to mistake intensity for truth, to follow any sensation that feels profound, to assume that if something is unseen, it must be higher. But the invisible is vast. It includes the sacred and the unresolved. It includes guidance and distortion. There are realms of clarity and realms of confusion, and both can speak. The astral plane, for example, is often described as a realm of vision and revelation, but it is also the realm of illusion, of lingering emotional debris, of entities not fully in the light. Theosophists warned of this. Mystics cautioned their students. They knew that the unseen world, like the seen one, has layers, and that discernment is the only compass that keeps the seeker from being led astray. So how do you tell the difference? True guidance feels quiet but stable. It doesn't rush, it doesn't push. It arrives not with urgency, but with clarity. There is no anxiety in its presence. No need to convince me. It is spacious. It leaves you more whole, not more confused. It may challenge you, but it does not manipulate you. Distortion, on the other hand, often carries intensity. It may flatter the ego, it may invoke fear. It often speaks in absolutes. You must do this now. You're chosen. Everyone else is wrong. These are red flags, not because truth can't be strong, but because truth never removes your sovereignty. It never demands your belief, it invites your participation. Carl Jung warned that the unconscious, when unintegrated, can wear many masks. What appears as divine can simply be the unloved part of yourself, dressed in light to avoid being seen in shadow. We all carry unmet needs, forgotten wounds, and desires we dare not admit, and these can rise in the inner world disguised as guidance. This doesn't mean the guidance is fake. It means it's filtered, and the filter is your self-awareness. That's why spiritual maturity is not about how many visions you've had. It's about how deeply you know your own shadow, how honestly you've looked at the parts of you that want to escape responsibility, how carefully you distinguish between inner guidance and inner echo. And then there's another layer, spiritual imposters. Yes, the unseen world contains intelligence beyond the personal self, guides, teachers, luminous beings, but it also contains interference, presences that feed off attention, attachment, fear. Not demons in the Hollywood sense, but frequencies that resonate with confusion and cling to it. The mystics of old didn't fear these energies, but they didn't ignore them either. They practiced grounding, humility, clear intention, not because they were weak, but because they understood. Sensitivity without discernment is a recipe for distortion. This is why spiritual hygiene matters, not in the sense of superstition, but in the sense of energetic integrity. Protecting your field isn't paranoia, it's wisdom. Just as you wouldn't open your home to every stranger on the street, you don't open your psyche to every whisper you hear. Centering practices, breath, stillness, prayer, sacred symbols, are not just tools for peace. They are filters. They clarify what gets through. They calibrate your inner space so that only what resonates with truth can enter. This is not about fear. It's about clarity. Because when your field is clear, the right messages land, and the false ones dissolve. The beautiful paradox is this: the more you honor discernment, the more refined your intuition becomes. You stop needing constant signs. You begin to know not everything will make sense right away, but your body will speak, your heart will whisper, your dreams will shift, and you'll notice something subtle but profound. You feel cleaner, lighter, more presence. Not because you've escaped shadow, but because you're no longer afraid of it. You've integrated it. And once the shadow is seen, it can no longer deceive. You're no longer just a seeker. You're a steward, a guardian of your own frequency. This is the turning point, the place where spiritual insight meets inner maturity, the moment when you stop chasing light and start becoming it, measured, grounded, and real. Because the invisible realms are not just waiting to be entered, they're waiting to be navigated. Chapter 9. Living the Whisper. There comes a point on every path, not when you have all the answers, but when you realize you no longer need them. A quiet moment where something shifts inside you, and you understand. The sacred is not somewhere else. It's here, now, in your breath, in your choices, in the way you walk through the world, moment by moment. This is where the real journey begins. Not in vision, but in embodiment. Not in mystical escape, but in presence. To live the whisper is to become a tuning fork for the unseen. It is to move through life as if it's listening to you, because it is. Every step, every word, and every pause becomes part of the conversation. No longer do you wait for signs. You become the kind of person who generates them, because your inner clarity shapes what the outer world reflects back. This is not about perfection. This is about coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, actions, and intentions begin to harmonize, life organizes around that harmony. You feel more grounded, not because nothing disturbs you, but because nothing knocks you out of your own center for long. You can still fall, still grieve, still struggle, but you do so from within a greater awareness. You don't identify with the storm. You remember the stillness inside it. And that remembrance becomes your anchor. Living the whisper means living from alignment, not reaction. It means choosing from resonance, not from fear. You begin to feel what is true, not because someone told you, but because it rings. You hear the hum of rightness in your chest. You sense the subtle discord of what no longer fits. Your life becomes less about explanation and more about expression. You don't need to convince anyone. You simply become the frequency you were born to carry, and that frequency changes everything. When you walk into a room, people feel it. When you speak, something in your tone transmits calm, clarity, or awakening. When you listen, people open, not because of technique, but because of the space you've cultivated within yourself. You no longer seek to fix. You offer presence. You no longer chase certainty. You carry stillness. But here's the secret. Most never speak aloud. Living in alignment with the invisible realms is not always convenient. It will ask things of you. It will disrupt what is false. It will strip away the masks you didn't know you were wearing. Sometimes it will bring silence when you want direction. Other times, it will lead you toward discomfort, not because it wants you to suffer, but because your soul has outgrown the smallness you were calling safety. To follow the whisper is to let go of control and replace it with attunement. It is to trust that you are part of something wiser than your plans. It is to shift from outcome to orientation, from achieving to becoming. It does not mean abandoning action. It means aligning action with truth. Sometimes it means doing the hard thing, saying no when it would be easier to say yes, saying yes when your ego wants to run, walking away from things you once thought were essential, staying when the old you would have fled. Because when you live the whisper, the question changes. It's no longer, what do I want? It becomes, what is seeking to move through me? You become less of a personality and more of a passage, a sacred corridor between what is unseen and what is made visible through your life. But you don't float above the world. You enter it more deeply. You see the sacred in everyday moments. You begin to understand that how you fold your laundry matters, how you speak to a stranger matters, how you meet disappointment matters, because all of it is part of the dialogue. All of it is being recorded, not by some judging God, but by the frequency of your soul. Every gesture leaves a trace, and so you choose with more care, not out of fear, but out of reverence. You begin to walk slower, speak less, listen more. You laugh deeper. You cry without apology. You carry sorrow like a sacred object, not a flaw. You carry joy like a responsibility, not a privilege. You begin to feel the invisible, everywhere. In the eyes of a child, in the wind on your skin, in the echo of a word spoken with intention. You realize you are not here to seek the light. You are here to become it, not by avoiding the world, but by becoming the bridge between its seen and unseen parts. By living the whisper with such integrity, your life becomes a message in itself, a message from the invisible realms that says, this is what it looks like to live awake. This is what it feels like to carry the sacred, not in concept, but in form, not later, not someday, but now. Chapter 10. The Bridge Between Worlds. You've listened long enough now to know the invisible is not far away. It was never behind the stars or buried in cryptic scriptures. It was always close, closer than breath, quieter than thought, waiting in the stillness between moments, whispering from the corners of dreams, stirring in your bones whenever you paused long enough to feel. This was never a book of information. It was a doorway. And you are what steps through. By now, you understand that the sacred isn't reserved for mountaintops or mystics. It's not hidden in mystery schools or coded languages. It's here, folded into the fabric of daily life, pressed into your laughter, your silence, your longing, your choices. The question isn't whether the invisible realms exist. The question is whether you will honor them, whether you'll listen, whether you'll live in a way that allows them to move through you. Because you are the meeting point. You are the edge of two worlds, the physical and the energetic, the finite and the infinite, the seen and the unseen. And the more you awaken, the more you realize, this edge is not a boundary. It is a bridge. Your thoughts ripple through the field. Your emotions shape your frequency. Your choices send signals through time. And every time you act from integrity, from alignment, from soul, you become a conduit, a prism through which the formless becomes form. You've already heard the whispers. Now comes the greater invitation. To live them. To live them in how you speak to those who cannot hear yet. In how you move through a world that values noise more than stillness. In how you anchor peace without needing credit. In how you hold grief like sacred water. In how you offer presence like a sacrament. Because the great shift doesn't come from new systems, it comes from new selves. Selves that remember, selves that listen, selves that stop performing and start embodying, selves that carry the invisible like a secret lantern inside the chest, and walk through the world not to preach, but to radiate. You don't need to teach this, you need to be this, you don't need to argue for the unseen. You need to listen to it so deeply, so honestly, that your life becomes its proof. You won't always feel certain. There will still be forgetting. The old questions will return, the noise will rise. But now, you know how to return. You know how to tune your own instrument. You know that behind the chaos, the signal remains unchanged. You know that even when the sky goes dark, the stars are still there, whispering their old patient songs. There is no final initiation, only deeper ones. No moment when you arrive, only new thresholds to cross with reverence. The more you walk this path, the more you realize it's not a path at all. It's a spiral, a return, a remembering. And yet, something is different now. Because now, you walk not only with questions, but with attunement, with a felt sense of something larger moving through you, not controlling you, not choosing for you, but inviting you gently to become more you than you've ever allowed yourself to be. This is the whisper behind every whisper. You were never disconnected, not for one moment. You were never lost. You were never alone. You were never broken. You simply forgot how to feel the thread. Now you remember, and remembrance changes everything. So breathe. Step forward, slowly. Listen, not for words, but for direction. Live, not as someone trying to reach something far away, but as someone translating what's already here, what has always been here. The light, the presence, the message. You are not just receiving it, you are becoming it. Conclusion. And so, we arrive at the edge of the last word. But the whisper never ends. It lingers, soft as breath, clear as starlight, waiting for you not to remember this book, but to remember yourself. The quiet power within, the sacred pattern you carry. The unseen world walks beside you step for step, waiting not to be found, but to be felt. If something stirred within you here, if a line opened your heart, if a silence spoke louder than sound, if a presence moved through these words and met something ancient inside you, then this journey has only just begun. Let it echo, let it guide you, let it ripple into the rhythm of your days. And if you wish to continue walking with us, to listen, to remember, to awaken, again and again, then we invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here, the journey continues. Here, silence is honored. And here, your soul has a place to listen deeper. Thank you for walking this spiral with us. Until the next whisper, stay attuned, stay sacred, stay home within yourself. The Middle Book Team.